After retiring from service, he'd built a simple life working security at a shopping mall. He thought he'd left his military past behind forever, until artificial intelligence recognized him and revealed that an unfinished case of justice had finally found him. Welcome to AI Human Stories. Before we dive into this incredible tale of duty, justice, and how technology can help right old wrongs, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe some debts must be paid no matter how long it takes, hit that subscribe button. Westfield Shopping Center in Mesa, Arizona looked like every other American mall. Food court, department stores, the usual mix of teenagers and families wandering between shops. Nothing exciting ever happened there, which was exactly how security supervisor Rick Martinez liked it. 54 years old, clean-shaven, uniform pressed to military standards even though nobody required it. Rick had been head of security for 8 years, running a tight but fair operation. Store managers respected him, teenage troublemakers feared him, and lost children somehow always felt safe when Rick helped them find their parents. What made Rick different from other mall cops wasn't just his professionalism, it was his awareness. The way he could scan a crowd and immediately identify potential problems, how he positioned himself to have clear sightlines and quick access to exits. The fact that he knew every employee, every regular customer, every delivery schedule. Rick sees everything, the other security guards would joke. Guy's got eyes in the back of his head. But Rick's vigilance went deeper than job requirements. He noticed patterns that others missed. The way certain people moved through crowds, how someone's body language changed when they were carrying concealed weapons, which teenagers were just goofing off versus which ones were planning actual trouble. The skills had been learned somewhere else, in circumstances where missing details meant people died, but Rick never talked about where he'd acquired his training. His employment file listed 8 years in the Army, honorable discharge, no combat deployments, standard background for someone seeking steady civilian work. What the file didn't mention was that Sergeant First Class Ricardo Martinez had spent most of those 8 years in units that didn't officially exist, doing missions that never appeared in any public record. Detective Sarah Chen from Mesa PD had been working with mall security on a shoplifting investigation when she started noticing things about Rick Martinez that didn't add up. His tactical awareness was off the charts. During their meetings, Rick would unconsciously position himself with clear views of entrances, automatically assess everyone who approached, and demonstrate knowledge of criminal behavior patterns that went way beyond basic security training. "Rick, where did you learn to read people like that?" Sarah asked after watching him identify a potential pickpocket in a crowd of 50 people. "Army taught me to pay attention," Rick said simply. "What was your MOS? Military occupational specialty?" "Administrative stuff mostly. Nothing exciting." But Sarah had worked with plenty of former military personnel. Rick's skills weren't administrative, they were operational, elite operational. The breakthrough came during a bomb threat at the mall. While other security guards were evacuating shoppers, Rick was examining the area with a level of expertise that made Sarah's bomb squad colleagues look like amateurs. "This is fake," Rick said after a quick visual inspection. "Whoever made this wanted it to look scary but not actually explode. Wrong wire colors, wrong timer setup, wrong explosive signature." Sarah stared at him. "How do you know about explosive signatures?" Rick realized he'd said too much. Discovery Channel. You watch enough documentaries, you pick things up. But Sarah wasn't buying it. Bomb disposal knowledge wasn't something you learned from TV. It was something you learned by working with actual explosives in actual dangerous situations. That evening, Sarah ran Rick's name through advanced military databases, including classified records she had access to through her federal task force work. What she found made her rethink everything she thought she knew about the quiet mall security supervisor. The Department of Defense had recently implemented an AI system designed to track down war criminals and justice fugitives who'd been avoiding accountability for decades. The program cross-referenced facial recognition, behavioral analysis, and location data to identify individuals connected to unresolved cases. Sarah had access to the system through her work on human trafficking cases. On a hunch, she uploaded Rick's security badge photo and employment information. The AI response was immediate and classified. Identity match: Sergeant First Class Ricardo Martinez, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Current status: high priority Mayonnaise, justice case pending, classification level, eyes only, contact DOD immediately. But when Sarah dug deeper, she discovered something unexpected. Rick wasn't wanted for justice. He was justice. The AI had identified Rick as a key witness in a war crimes case that had been dormant for 12 years. He possessed critical evidence about war crimes committed by a private military contractor in Afghanistan, evidence that could finally bring powerful people to account. The problem was that Rick had been in witness protection, living under his real name, but with a carefully constructed background that hid his special operations service. Someone had been hunting him for over a decade, which was why he'd disappeared into civilian life, but the case had been reopened, new evidence had emerged, and federal prosecutors needed Rick's testimony to nail the war criminals who'd been living free while good soldiers carried the weight of their crimes. The AI hadn't just found Rick, it had found the key to delivering long-overdue justice. Sarah approached Rick carefully. This wasn't just about mall security anymore, this was about war crimes, witness protection, and people who killed to keep their secrets buried. "Rick, I need to talk to you about Afghanistan," she said during a quiet moment in his office. Rick's whole demeanor changed. The friendly security supervisor disappeared, replaced by someone who'd learned to stay alive in the most dangerous places on Earth. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rick said, but his hand unconsciously moved toward his radio, not to call for backup but to assess it as a potential weapon. Sarah showed him the AI results on her encrypted tablet. "The system identified you as Ricardo Martinez, Delta Force. There's an active federal case that needs your testimony." Rick stared at the screen for a long time. "How many people know?" "Just me and the federal prosecutors. The AI flagged you as a protected witness, not a target." Rick sat down heavily. 12 years of careful anonymity, blown by artificial intelligence in 30 seconds. "They told me I was safe," Rick said quietly. "That the case was cold, that I could live normally as long as I kept my head down. The case got reopened 6 months ago. New evidence came to light about Blackwater operatives who were involved in civilian massacres. Your testimony could put them away for life." Rick was quiet for several minutes. Outside his office, the mall continued its normal rhythm. Families shopping, teenagers hanging out, the ordinary life he'd built and protected. "If I testify, they'll come for me again," Rick said finally. "Maybe, but if you don't, they keep getting away with murder." Rick's story emerged slowly. In 2009, he'd been part of a Delta Force unit working in Afghanistan when they'd witnessed private military contractors executing Afghan civilians and staging the scene to look like enemy action. Rick had reported the war crimes through proper channels, but the contractors had powerful political connections. Instead of being prosecuted, they'd been quietly transferred to other operations while Rick was threatened, harassed, and eventually forced into witness protection. "I spent 3 years looking over my shoulder," Rick explained to Sarah. "Anonymous death threats, suspicious accidents, friends getting visited by people asking questions. The message was clear: forget what you saw or disappear permanently." Rick had chosen to disappear. New identity, new life, ordinary job where nobody would think to look for a former special operations soldier. "I convinced myself that justice wasn't worth dying for," Rick continued, "that maybe those civilians were acceptable losses in a bigger war, that I was being naive about how the world really worked." But the guilt had eaten at him for 12 years. Every night making security rounds in the mall, Rick thought about the Afghan families who'd died, and the killers who'd never been held accountable. "The AI finding me. Maybe it's not an accident," Rick said. "Maybe it's time to finish what I started." Sarah nodded. "The prosecutors say they have enough evidence now to guarantee convictions. They just need someone who was there to confirm what happened. And if the contractors try to silence me again, federal protection. Real protection this time, not just relocation. They take this seriously now." Rick looked around his office. Photos of mall events, employee schedules, incident reports, the quiet life he'd built, brick by brick, shift by shift. "If I do this, I lose all of this. They'll have to move me again. New identity, new life." "Rick, those contractors have been operating freely for 12 years. They've probably committed more war crimes, killed more innocent people. Your testimony doesn't just bring justice for the past, it stops future atrocities." Rick agreed to testify, but with conditions. He wanted to finish his current security contract, train his replacement, and make sure the mall would be protected in his absence. "Some of these people have become like family," Rick explained. "I can't just disappear without making sure they're safe." The federal prosecutors agreed. Rick would testify via secure video link from a protected location, maintaining his operational security while delivering justice. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Rick's testimony was devastating, detailed, precise, unshakable. He described war crimes with the methodical accuracy of someone trained to observe and remember under extreme pressure. The defense attorneys tried to discredit him, questioning his memory, his motives, his credibility. But Rick had kept detailed notes, photographs, and evidence for 12 years, waiting for this moment. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" the defense asked.
Because I was afraid, Rick answered honestly. But fear isn't an excuse for allowing injustice to continue. The contractors were convicted on all counts. Life sentences for war crimes, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Rick's courage had finally delivered the accountability that had been delayed for over a decade. But the victory came with a price. Rick would have to disappear again, assume a new identity, start over somewhere else. After the trial, Rick faced an unexpected decision. The contractors' conviction had exposed their entire network. Other witnesses came forward. The military was conducting comprehensive reviews of private contractor operations. "You don't have to disappear," Sarah told him. "The threat level has changed dramatically. Most of their network is either in prison or under federal investigation." Rick could return to his life at the mall, his job, his routine. The AI system would monitor for threats, federal agencies would provide discreet protection, and he could finally live without looking over his shoulder. But Rick had changed during the trial. Testifying had reminded him of who he'd been before he became afraid, the soldier who'd been willing to risk everything for justice. "I spent 12 years hiding," Rick told Sarah. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." The Department of Justice offered Rick a position as a consultant, helping identify and prosecute other war crimes cases. His experience, skills, and credibility could help deliver justice in dozens of cases that had been gathering dust for years. "You'd be helping other witnesses find the courage to come forward," the prosecutor explained, showing them that the system can work, that justice is possible even when it takes time. Rick accepted. Today, Rick Martinez works for the Department of Justice War Crimes Division, not from behind a desk, but in the field, finding witnesses, gathering evidence, building cases against those who thought they were untouchable. The AI system that found him has become part of his toolkit. Using pattern recognition and data analysis to identify war crimes networks, locate witnesses, and build unshakable cases, technology can find the truth, Rick explains to other potential witnesses, but it takes human courage to speak it. Rick's work has led to convictions in over 20 war crimes cases. Each trial reminds him why he became a soldier in the first place, to protect innocent people and uphold justice. The mall in Mesa has a new security supervisor, but Rick still visits occasionally. The employees know him as the guy who used to work there before getting a government job. They don't know he helped put war criminals in prison. Rick keeps a photo from his mall security days on his office desk, not because he misses the work, but because it reminds him that justice and protection take many forms. "I spent 8 years protecting shoppers and teenagers," Rick reflects. "Now I protect witnesses and evidence. Same mission, different battlefield." Rick's courage to testify created a ripple effect throughout the military and contractor communities. Other witnesses found the strength to come forward. Long-buried cases were reopened. Justice departments in allied countries began their own investigations. The AI system that discovered Rick has been implemented globally, helping international tribunals identify witnesses, locate evidence, and build cases against war criminals who thought they were beyond reach. Rick's case proved something important, Sarah notes. Justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it just means justice is gathering strength. Rick has written a training manual for federal investigators, Finding Truth in Dark Places, a guide to war crimes investigation. It's used by law enforcement agencies worldwide, but the work that matters most to Rick happens in quiet conversations with frightened witnesses, helping them understand that speaking truth is worth the risk. "I spent 12 years thinking I was weak for hiding," Rick tells them, "but survival isn't weakness, and when you're ready to speak, that's when real strength begins." The artificial intelligence that found Rick had been designed to solve cold cases and deliver justice. But it discovered something more important, how courage once found spreads to others who need it most. Ricardo Martinez spent 8 years as a special operations soldier protecting his country. He spent 8 more years protecting a shopping mall. Now he spends his time protecting the truth itself. All 3 missions required the same qualities: vigilance, courage, and the understanding that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes. The mall security guard who became a war crimes investigator represents something important about justice and moral courage. Rick's story shows us that artificial intelligence isn't just about solving technical problems. Sometimes it's about connecting people with their destiny, helping them find the courage to do what they've always known was right. And sometimes justice isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about ensuring that truth survives, that accountability exists, and that good people don't have to carry the weight of other people's crimes. Because the real victory isn't defeating your enemies, it's protecting the innocent, and ensuring that those who prey on the vulnerable face consequences for their actions. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever known someone who found the courage to speak truth when it mattered most? Someone who stood up for justice even when it cost them something? Share their stories in the comments below. Tell us about the whistleblowers, witnesses, and truth-tellers who make accountability possible. And if this story inspired you, subscribe to AI Human Stories. Because in a world where artificial intelligence can help uncover hidden truths, the most important discoveries aren't about technology. They're about finding the courage to use truth as a weapon against injustice, and understanding that some fights are worth having, even when they take years to win. Until next time, remember, justice isn't about when it arrives, it's about making sure it arrives at all.